All right. Hi, everyone. Let me introduce you to our guest, Richard Heck. He's a 44-year-old computer scientist and family man who does what he can in his limited spare time to slow aging. And what he's doing is really working because he's currently tied for the world's seventh slowest pace of aging, according to the Rejuvenation Olympics. Let's find out how he does it. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Lucas. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Great to have you. So let's start off. Could you please give a brief backstory of what got you interested in health and longevity and why?
I've always kind of taken care of myself, but I think around the time I turned 40, I started to get some of the ailments with aging. So I had started to have back issues and other stuff, and I was just like, let me see if I can find a way to optimize to slow this down because I don't want more health issues to pop up. And so that's when I started experimenting with supplements and different things, and then I found different influencers on YouTube and stuff, and it really kind of guided my path toward trying to optimize what I do on a daily basis. Because having a family so busy, I really don't want to think about it. I just want to create a schedule and just do the schedule every day where I don't have to think about it. And so that's kind of the path I ended up taking. So.
Mm-hmm. And so what does longevity really mean to you? What is your interest in longevity? Do you just want to maximize living within the current human lifespan and be as healthy as long as possible? Or are you on the side where you want to try to live and push the longevity maximum as far as possible?
It'd be fun to push the maximum, but from my perspective, I started it to try to delay the ailments of aging as long as possible. And so ideally, I'm interested more, I guess, in lifespan than total life. So, yeah.
Okay. And can we dive a little bit into your family history? Do you have long-lived relatives? Do you have favorable genetics on your family side?
Yeah, it depends. So my dad's side, they both live to their 90s. They live in kind of like a rural part of Indiana. And they had very kind of simple, basic lives. And they lived a really long time. But then on my mom's side, my grandfather passed at 52 due to a heart attack. He started having heart attacks in his 40s. And then her mother passed away at 70. So I either got really good genetics, really bad genetics, or somewhere in between. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. So, but I am, because of my mother's father passing at 52 and having heart attacks in his 40, I am hypersensitive to all the heart related stuff, which has kind of guided me a little bit on what I do and what I take. So yeah.
You and me both, we seem to share the similar type of genetics in terms of cardiovascular disease risk. So have you actually done any whole genome sequencing or any types of risk assessments?
No, I actually not familiar with any that are available. I know I've heard things about gene sequencing and stuff, but I've never actually explored any of that. So.
Yeah, it's more on the consumer side that's available these days. But if you have a really high risk, like you say, from your mother's side, if you went through the proper medical stream and saw a provider, you may be eligible to get health screening.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I went to my cardiologist 6 to 9 months ago because my sister, she's only a couple years older than me. She had a widowmaker heart attack. She survived, but I went in there and I'm like, hey, my sister almost passed away. She's a year older than me. And they did all the tests. I did the stress test, the cardio, the ECG or whatever, where they look at my heart for 45 minutes. I can't remember all the names of the stuff, but they gave me the big 3 tests or the big 2 tests, and I passed them all. But it is a little discouraging because it's okay, they look at all this stuff, but they can't actually tell if my arteries are about to be blocked or not.
Right.
There seems like there's a lot of limitations on the heart stuff as far as how deep they can go without being kind of intrusive and getting expensive. So.
Right. Yeah. So I guess they didn't do imaging. No imaging of your heart.
They did imaging too. Yeah,
Okay.
but I don't think that covers the arteries. So it just says the heart looks good, but yeah.
Yeah, that's something that you can obviously pursue on the private side, and I know it's more popular. There's debatable utility with that, but I know it's more popular, and it's something I'm looking into too. I got my CAC scan, the calcium artery score, done,
Yeah.
but that has its limitations too for people our age, right?
Yeah, I scored a 0 on the calcium score, which was good, but then it's that only tells if your plaque is calcified, and it's you don't know how much plaque's in there, right? So.
Right. I think the better angiogram.
Leaving, yeah. So.
Yeah, I think the better route would be angiogram. It's something I'm looking into next, but that is more invasive to inject a dye into your bloodstream. So yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, we could talk about that for a long time. But I was just curious. So related to that, is there any other health problems? You mentioned you had back issues that kind of got you into health and longevity, and then also you're concerned about your cardiovascular disease risk.
Yeah, yeah, that, and then also, I lucked out. Well, my doctor says I lucked out or didn't luck out genetically with a enlarged prostate. So because I got an MRI on my back, he was able to look at that and like identify that I had BPH and all this stuff. And it's like, my doctor's like, hey, this is it's just a common thing. You just didn't look out with genetics. Like you've got the prostate size of somebody who's 65 years old. And then I look online and I'm like, well, this is only like a Western issue. This isn't really like an Eastern issue, which makes me think that it's less genetic and more diet and environmental factors, which caused me to really kind of evaluate what I eat and drink and all that stuff too. So, um, it's all just interesting. But yeah, those were kind of the big three areas. So
No, I think it's essential to know these things, and especially for the community as well, to not paint a picture kind of like Brian Johnson does. I mean, I don't know his personal history with health, but he seems to be in generally great health. I think it's great to highlight that. Other people in this field that want to live long and healthy, we're battling through our own issues, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's hard to reverse 40 years of. I mean, I typically make pretty good decisions, but I really didn't eat vegetables until I was like 41. So I just, you know.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was always about the macro and just make sure I got over 100 grams of protein. I've done that since I was like 20. But other than that, I'm like, oh, I don't like vegetables, so I'm not going to eat them. So, it's sometimes you wonder if that stuff has caused you to be where you are today. But
Yeah, I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole quite a bit, and I think obviously personalized diet is the ideal way to go, and everybody should be eating a different diet. But I don't side one way or the other. But yeah, I've been diving a lot into the carnivore area, and there's some people that are doing really well on that diet. Long term effects, are still up in the air, but it's interesting to see how these people can thrive for a decade plus, just eating essentially meat.
yeah,
So
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Anyway, so with that in mind, I guess with the diet subject in mind, can you give a brief overview of your day, of your longevity protocol, and then we could dive more into diet supplementation and exercise.
Yeah, so my diet, and I got my website up. My diet's largely influenced by Brian Johnson. Some of the stuff I've done historically, like so I start day with like a pre-breakfast, which is collagen, cocoa, and cinnamon, which is a variation on Brian Johnson's Green Giant that he used to do.
Mhm.
He had other stuff in there, but it didn't work well with my stomach, so I dropped some of the things. Like I think he had spermidine in there or something like that. So some of the things I remove, but I do that. I do a little bit of a morning workout, just kind of wake up stuff. It's essentially the stuff I did in physical therapy for my back. And then I do my breakfast shake, which I've done for 20 years, but I've slightly kind of varied it over time. It's just whey protein, a bunch of berries, kale, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, parsley. So I think it's like 400 calories, but it's a lot of food, not a lot of calories. But yeah, that's what I start with.
The shake keeps you satiated.
It's a lot of food.
Yeah.
It's yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, and then like half an hour to an hour later, like I'll have half a cup of coffee, and then like half an hour from that, I'll have my green tea pomegranate blend, and it's like a handful of pistachios, and then that's kind of my breakfast, but it kind of spans into the morning. So I'm just kind of eating throughout the day. Late morning, like around 11 a.m. to noon, I have my lunch. So this is a variation of Brian Johnson's like vegetable medley that he did. I did it for like 3 months. I didn't like it. Like I don't like the idea of like eating brown lentils every day. Like it's just,
Mhm.
honestly it was disgusting. Uh, but yeah, so I ended up what I do is salmon, avocado, garlic, ginger, apple cider vinegar, olive oil, Brazil nut, dark chocolate, walnuts, V8 juice. So V8 juice for the prostate. And then I either do vegetables or I do like a sweet potato and an egg. So I try to I try to mix it up a little bit. I mean, the salmon and avocado just makes anything taste great. So I can kind of like pile in the vegetables and not really notice that I'm eating vegetables just because the stuff I blend with it. So yeah, that's my lunch. And then after that, I have a normal dinner. Whatever my family's eating, I eat. I try to make good choices, but I just kind of eat what the family eats, and I just look at it like if I get over 50% of my calories with this regimen, I have enough micronutrients and macronutrients to kind of satisfy everything I do. And so I like to eat an early dinner if possible. It does help with my sleep scores, and so it is good for me to have an early dinner, and then it's like a 12-hour fast before I start it all over again the next day. So I have done 18-6 before, like intermittent fasting. It worked pretty well for me. I was actually dropping too much weight, so that's why I kind of moved away from it. But I do like the way it made me feel as far as like mental clarity and stuff. But it's just really hard to do an 18/6 diet when you have like a normal dinner and all that stuff. Because yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you sounds like you track your calories. Do you actually track them to the point that you know exactly how much you're consuming and you're trying to caloric restrict? Something like
It's
that.
probably between 2,200, 2,600. Like I can add up all the stuff that's um, confirmed, like that I'm gonna eat every day, and I think that takes me to like 16, 1,700 if I'm remembering correctly. But then like the dinner varies, right?
Yeah.
If we go out to eat, or I'll get nachos. Like I don't always like eat well, so
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of varies. But one thing I did forget to mention. Uh, I do my protein shake. I used to do it when I exercised in the evening, but I moved it to earlier in the day. So I try to do a protein shake with chia seeds about an hour before dinner, and that kind of curbs my appetite a little bit, and also gets me in my protein range where I want to be, which is like around 120 to 140. So yeah, I do kind of hack my dinner. Like I eat whatever I want, but at the same time, like I'm kind of full going into dinner that I typically prevents me from overeating. So,
Yeah. That's a good trick. I should try that. I've been struggling because of a stressful time in my life. Maybe that's a good
yeah.
recommendation. And what about the trifecta of vices: sugar, caffeine, and alcohol?
Yeah, as far as sugar, I mean, I love sugar and cookies and stuff. I think the typical rule I follow is if I eat dessert after dinner, I'll typically walk on the treadmill for 10 minutes just to like try to keep my blood sugar in check. Um, But otherwise, I don't really have limitations on it. I'm not super hungry throughout the day because I eat so much. I'll see. So like we just went through like 10 boxes of Thin Mints in the past couple weeks, and it's mostly my wife and kids. They'll clear through them. But I mean, I typically when I start eating Girl Scout cookies, I only eat a few because I'm like I eat them and I'm like I don't really feel like eating. Like it's really satisfying, but yeah, I can kind of limit myself just because I'm always full. So
That's good. It sounds like you have a good gut to brain connection in terms of satiation.
yeah, yeah.
And then alcohol, do you avoid it or just?
I'll drink maybe one glass a month, 2 glass a month. Like my white blood cell count's kind of low. I feel like whenever I drink alcohol, I end up paying for it, especially if I'm out when I drink. It kills my sleep score. Honestly, I prefer to avoid alcohol if I can. I do prefer, if I know I'm going to a social event, I'll actually prefer doing like a THC drink versus like drinking alcohol because that won't affect my sleep. And it's just I, I've done blood tests doing that and not doing that. I don't see a difference. Maybe I'm not doing enough blood tests, but yeah, that stuff is like it doesn't affect me at all health wise. So
Okay.
yeah.
So based on your experience with diet, what would be your number one advice for people looking through the lens of longevity or at least lowering your pace of aging? You mentioned a
Um,
couple.
yeah, I mean, I would just say find something that's sustainable. A lot of people like different things. Some people can do the Brian Johnson diet, some people can't. Some people like carnivore. Like whatever works for you, and as long as you're getting tested. Like my biggest thing is like it's a lot like coding. It's just incremental improvement. You try some stuff, you do some blood work, you try some more stuff, you do some more blood work, and then you just over time, you just try to triage it to where you're improving over time. And you should eat the things you like to eat. Obviously in moderation. But if you go on a diet and you can't maintain it, it's kind of pointless. I don't like the idea of thinking about things in like diet. Like I've got to do these things to be able to lose this amount of weight within this time for like a trip or a event or whatever. And I look at it as, I'm just going to do the stuff every day so I don't have to think about it and I can enjoy life. So.
I would agree. I mean, on a spectrum of eat anything you want to being very strict, like potentially Brian Johnson, I'm more towards the side of Brian Johnson, but I definitely think you should enjoy food. I think we have these senses, our smell, sense of smell, sense of taste for a reason to eat bland food. I think every day is just, it's not doable for most people.
Yeah.
No, not many people have that kind of willpower.
Yeah. Yep. And hats off to, people like Brian and Michael Lustgartner who, weigh their food and have everything very precise. It's very impressive that they're able to maintain that. So
Yeah, no, I agree. Hats off to them, and it's great for them if they can do it. But I think for the majority of people, I think it's unrealistic to expect.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's segue into supplementation. So I noticed on your website there's at least 3 supplements and possibly 2 medications that you take. Can you dive more into that?
Yeah, so vitamin D3, K2. Yeah, a couple years ago, I tested for that. My vitamin D3 was because I'm indoors all the time. I think it was like in the low 30s, upper 20s, which is right on the threshold of being too low. So then that's when I added the D3 supplement and then also, obviously eating salmon every day. At this point, my D3 score is probably the past 2 times I've checked it, it's been in the 80s or 90s, which is like, I think 100 is the cap. But yeah, so that's pretty good. I probably take too much vitamin D, but I feel pretty good about it. I do the turmeric with piperine. I was doing it every other day. Uh, Recently, I've just started doing it every day. I do notice my sleep scores improve maybe a couple points a little bit, but yeah, sometimes I just so I take that. Minoxidil, it's heart health, but it's more for the hair, so I take that orally. Uh, Rosuvastatin, around 10 milligrams. It's interesting. Like so, 9 months ago when I started taking the statin. The doctor, he was a young guy. He was probably around my age. His dad had passed in his 50s, and he'd been taking like a high dose statin since he was like late 20s. So he signed me up for 20 milligrams, and I'm like, isn't that kind of high? And he's like, no, it's fine. Like, that's what you should take. And I'm like, I don't really like taking supplements unless I have to. So I
Mm-hmm.
started taking 20 milligrams. My LDL went from 140 to 53. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm a 53 now, but I don't really like taking 20 milligrams. So I've actually backed that off. I need to update my website, but I'm actually down to 5 milligrams.
Okay.
And my LDL went from a 53, I think it's like a 62 now. So I went to like a quarter of the dose, but I'm only up 10 points, and I'm definitely not 140 anymore. My body is super sensitive to cholesterol. I've tried everything. I tried for a year before I went on medication to try to get my cholesterol scores down, but nothing I tried really worked. So I'm on the 5 milligrams.
Diet didn't work or anything like that, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I tried a bunch of stuff. It just wouldn't work. So I take the statin, limited dose. I do notice it did increase my HbA1c from like a 5.0 to I think I'm at like a 5.3 now. So I do feel like it has an effect a little bit on my HbA1c, but yeah, I'm still in a good range, and I'm still kind of tweaking to try to figure out. Maybe I'll go down to like 2.5 milligrams or something at some point. But
So that's
uh,
your main side effect is your HbA1c increasing.
yeah, that's the only thing I noticed. All my other blood work is pretty good. Yeah, so yeah, that's the only thing I noticed that went up when I went on 20 milligrams, and then obviously I've rolled it back. So yeah. And the last thing's melatonin, 300 micrograms. I can't remember who recommended that, but it seems like a low dose is pretty effective for me. Yeah, I have no problems with sleep. So
So you
um,
needed that for sleep aid, or
yeah. I can't remember if it improved my Whoop scores or anything, but it just seemed like a good idea because at first I did notice a difference when I took the melatonin. I got better sleep, just subjectively, not through any scores or anything. But yeah, at this point, my body might be so used to it. Maybe I'm not getting the benefits that I used to get. But yeah, it was more based on recommendation. I, I do like the Michael Gardner's approach of like trying to limit the number of supplements taken, and that's why I take that approach of trying to limit the amount of supplements I take. Unless I notice an impact, I try not to take anything. So
Yeah.
I think that'll change as I get older, as my body like stops producing as much of the good stuff. I think I will take more supplements as I get older, but right now I think I'm pretty happy with the routine. So.
Yeah, I think generally that's a great philosophy. The less supplements, the better. I'm curious about, have you looked into your NAD levels and explored?
Yeah, my NAD levels are mid 30s. Let me look at my spreadsheet. I tested it last year. Yeah, I did the finger prick. I hate the finger prick tests. They're just very uncomfortable. I feel like I'm bleeding everywhere. It was, I don't see it on here. It's in the mid 30s. I haven't tried playing around with it. I did. So before I got into all the diet stuff that I do now, I saw who is it? David Sinclair. I saw his stuff about NMN and NR. So I started taking that and trying it out. But even at a low dose, like 150 milligrams, I started getting dizzy every time I took it. And I was doing it around the time I was intermittent fasting as well. And yeah, I tried NR, like True Niagen. I tried the NMN, like the high quality stuff. I tried good supplements because I wanted it to work. And I did notice a difference. Like I felt my mental clarity was really sharp when taking that stuff. But like, yeah, it kept making me dizzy. I got to the point where like, hey, I'm just going to put this to the side and just optimize other stuff instead. Eventually, I would like to circle back and try it again because I did like how I felt when I took it. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's where I
without
kind of,
the fasting and see if it, yeah.
I don't know if like between the fasting and the NMN, my body just like supercharged or something. But I was like, yeah, I was like hyper focused at work. It was great. But then I get dizzy spells. It's like, nope.
Any other supplements you're thinking about or you played around with, like say calcium, AKG?
I've thought about it. Yeah, I mean, I, I kind of want to. I like Seam Lawn stuff. I think one of the things he recommended was like I'm thinking B12. It's not B12. I can't remember what he takes, but it's not niacin. Yeah, I don't remember. There's a couple things I really want to know. So one of the things I really want to know is how Brian Johnson got from 0.68 to 0.62. So like for the longest time, it was 0.68 on like the speed of aging, and then like he got like the Folliston therapy, and then he did like the total plasma exchange, and then he's on the HBOT stuff now, the hyperbolic oxygen therapy, and I'm like, okay, he's doing a bunch of different stuff. Like what's really impacting his ability to get from 0.68 to 0.62? I know it's just a number, but I feel like he did something to like help him. He found a breakthrough, right? Like at this point, I'm kind of like, I'm just gonna do what I've been doing because I know it's working for me. I'll make little optimizations, but I really want somebody to like come out and be like, hey, this drastically reduces aging or really slows it down. I'm waiting for really an intervention where somebody can prove something. So that's what I'm really curious about more than finding a new supplement. So
Well,
I
yeah,
think
but
we're all
it
in the same
also
boat.
depends on what you're using to measure, right? I guess if you're basing it on the epigenetic clock versus say pheno age blood work, there's different obviously measurements, and I don't know if you can find one intervention that fits everybody, and then that will track in terms of lowering your pace of aging or your biological age on every single test. I agree with you. I think I wish he was more transparent, Brian Johnson, in terms of what is slowing his pace of aging, what's actually working. Because
Yeah.
he's shooting spaghetti at the wall, right? And then, but
there's too many optimizations. Yeah, there's too
yeah,
many variables. So.
but one thing is just kind of related to that. We're going to touch on this, I guess, next in terms of exercise routine. But I know your HRV scores are really high, and maybe more related to your sleep too. But your HRV score is really high, and I want to dive more into this. But I know Seam Ron has a really high HRV score, and it seems like I like to see the people in the Rejuvenation Olympics in the top, 30 or 50, and see their HRV scores. I want to see how that correlates with pace of aging. That'd be interesting to see, and resting heart rate too, because yours is pretty high, right?
Yeah. It's So I actually went on a Whoop sabbatical. So the past 3 months I haven't worn a Whoop. I'm planning to pick back up. Like the one thing, so I love Whoop. I think it's a fantastic tool to be able to measure like HRV and heart rate, but it's it. I'm very like kind of precise. So like if I go to bed too late or I want to watch something on TV, like it's gonna let me know the next day, and then I'll see my score is like terrible, and I'm like, oh, I can't work out because my score is so terrible. So I feel like it's kind of like it's like babysitting me too much or something. I don't know. So
Right.
I kind of wanted to take a break from it and like, okay, I'm just gonna live my life, and then like, okay, once I'm ready to optimize again, I'll put it back on and I'm gonna tweak. But yeah, I got my let's see, what was my last score before I started taking it. I was in my HRV was really high. I
So
got up to
116 at one point.
I got one. I got it. Well, the 116 was the average. The last month that I had it, I was in the 139 was my average for that month. And I was seeing scores. Yeah, I think it looks like it got up to like 170 at one point. Like, and sometimes I wonder if like the watch is calibrated wrong. But um, yeah, I would look at so Whoop has like the different groups you can look at, and I'd look at people who are like 40 to 50, and like on good nights I'd be like, oh, let me see how compared to everybody else and like that's between this age, and I'd be in like the top 50 or whatever, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because usually HRV is like a function of like cardiovascular ability, and like there it like I score like a 170, but I know I can't run a 6 minute mile, so it's like that makes no sense to me, like how it can be so high, and like I don't have that level of fitness to be able to do like the things that you'd think you'd be able to do with that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, for some reason, like I think my body is just sensitive to training for it because like before I started really doing like heavy cardio training, I wouldn't say I'd really do heavy cardio training, but it was like 50 or 60, but it went from like 50 or 60 to 90 as soon as like I added like one day a week of boxing. Like so like my levels jump like really high when I start adding training for some reason. So, and I think it's just a genetic thing more than I don't think I'm doing more activity than somebody else. I think it's just a
You respond to it. Your body
genetic.
responds to it. At
Yeah.
least
And
your heart.
I have a naturally lower heart rate too. Like I think my heart rate averaged like 45, 46 in the last month I used it. So again, I have a 46 resting heart rate at night, but like, yeah, I can't run a 6 minute mile. So it's,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a little deceptive. I don't know. I guess it's just a genetic thing. I feel like, but at
Yeah,
least
could
in
very
my
well
case,
be. Could
at
very
least,
well be.
but because like my VO2 max, I got it up to like, I think maybe 52 last year. I mean, this is based on watch measurements, which are like kind of suspicious, but I mean, it's yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. It just like the scores for me just I don't feel like they add up. But
Yeah, I
so
mean, there's a lot of questions like how accurate are these devices, right, in measuring these metrics is one question. But assuming that they're close enough, then yeah, it's curious how some things don't correlate the way that you expect them to, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So in terms of your exercise routine, you mentioned you box, I think once a week. You do resistance training, I think a couple times a week, right? Once is a Brian Johnson workout, and once is a different type of resistance training. So can you dive in a little bit more into that?
yeah, yeah. So the boxing, I actually quit boxing 2 or 3 months back. I needed a break. So one
You
of the
just
things
did everything 3 months ago.
yeah, I'm like taking a sabbatical. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I always struggled with was getting in zone five. Like, I really want to do the 4x4 and actually started the 4x4 a little bit about a month ago. Um,
On a bike or
yeah, so I couldn't do it in a bike. I couldn't do it running. I ended up the way I can do zone five is a jump rope. So I can
nice.
jump rope 4x4, and I can do it no problem, and I can keep my heart rate in that zone. So I do it about 3 times a week now, but I don't have any scores or anything because again, it's taking some time off. So yeah, I'm kind of like ramping up because one of my goals is to try to hit a VO2 max of like 60 this year. Because I mean, I got up to 52 last year, at least through my watch. I want to try to hit a 60. So I'm trying to find tweaks I can make to be able to get my scores up. But so I used to do the boxing, the Brian Johnson workout. I still do resistance training. It's kind of like I forgot that guy's name. He called it nickels and dimes, but it's basically like I do 25 push-ups, I do 5 pull-ups, I do 8 dips, I do 5 inverse push-ups, I do, I cycle through and I do like 8 sets of it, and it ends up being like a 40-minute workout where I'm just constantly moving the whole time and I'm just rotating through the exercise. So it's like a resistance training, but it's all body weight. So I do that. I do that one day a week, and then off days, 30 minutes zone 2 walking on a treadmill. Yeah, I still do that. So that's, and then in the morning I do my physical therapy related stuff. So I get on the treadmill for 10 minutes, 5 minutes forward, 5 minutes walking backwards, inversion table for a minute, and then 30 minutes of back exercises. So.
Do you dedicate any time to flexibility, mobility, and balance?
I should, but no, I don't do any of that stuff. At some point when I have more time, I'd like to. So.
Yeah, I found I've been integrating that a lot more lately because obviously because of aging, I find I'm getting a lot stiffer compared to my 20s, and it's been helping. Yeah.
The Brian Johnson routine has quite a few stretches in it as part of the activity, so I get it a bit from that, and then I really just started stretching a lot more after my zone 2 walks while everything's kind of fresh and warmed up. So, but yeah, it would be nice to
Yeah,
good stuff. So
that's great.
Try to slip it in when you can, so.
Exactly. Do you do any more formal measurements though? Did you ever go and get your VO2 formally assessed?
No. I got a DEXA scan, but no, I didn't do that. So.
Okay. And were you happy with the results from the DEXA, or do you use that as a guide point?
DEXA was okay. I was a little surprised. My scale says I'm like 12% body fat in the morning, but then I went in the afternoon and I got the DEXA scan and it said I was 14%. And I'm like, okay, that's a little high. Visceral fat was low. I was good there. Bone density, which I was really curious about, that was really good. I can't remember what my score was, but which makes sense. I mean, I do a lot of vitamin D and I do a lot of exercise. So the bone density was going to be pretty good. I was disappointed with my posture. I mean, that's what you get for working at a computer all day. But
Right.
that was discouraging. That's something I need to work on. But I thought it was, for $80, I thought I thought the DEXA scan was really informative. So it's funny. You go in there and they like look at your stuff and they're like, okay, you want to come back again in 3 months? And I'm like, no, not really. I got what I needed. I might come back in a couple of years, but
Yeah, that's too often. I think you have to be really dedicated to making a big change in 3 months.
I think it's geared for people like trying to lose weight and stuff like that. Like, it is good to have something like, okay, 3 months from now, like, let's make sure I'm still on the same pace to achieve what I want. But for me, I'm going to do what I do regardless, because it's just part of the routine. If I break the routine, everything falls apart. So I don't get any work done. Like, I miss the kids at the bus stop. Like, I just got to do what I got to do. So,
Yeah, we're creatures of habit, and I'm with you. I need a routine, otherwise things don't get done the way I want them to get done.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sleep. Anything you do different for sleep to maintain a great night of sleep?
Yeah, I love my blindfold. My wife puts the kids to bed, so the lights are always on. But I mean, I sleep a lot. I go to bed at 8:30. I wake up at 5:45, it's like over 9 hours. Which
Wow.
I think some people say like the optimal is 7. I don't know if I'm not sleeping half that time, but I feel pretty good about my 9 hours.
So you're out at 8:30, 8:45?
8:30, 8:45, I'm out. Yeah, I put the blindfold on. It's just pitch black. Yeah, there's not really anything special. I think I got the Brian Johnson pillow. It's okay. It's not that great, but and other than that, not really. I'm bad about.
Temperature or anything like that? Do you measure
What's that?
your temperature?
No, I should. Yeah, I should. I don't do the temperature. Also, they say like don't look at your phone. Terrible about that. I look at my phone all the way up till I fall asleep. I have books. I try to read books for like the last 30 minutes to 40 minutes before I go to bed, but I just rather doodle on my phone. So I break some of the rules, but
Doesn't
it's
seem to
working.
negatively impact you, right?
Yeah.
So when you used to measure with Whoop, like how many like your stages of sleep, your REM sleep, Were you consistently sleeping? You were
I
getting
think so.
great
I
sleep?
mean, I was getting my deep REM. I did notice my scores got better deeper into the sleep. And so if I woke up like an hour early, my numbers would be a lot worse because
Mm.
it's that final REM hit that actually takes you to the super low, like the super low heart rate and the super high HRV. Mine was progressively dropping over time the longer I slept. So if I only get 6 or 7 hours, like my sleep scores tank from it.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Interesting.
I don't know if everybody else is like that. Like, I don't know if people are like consistent with like what their scores are like throughout, but I can see mine just dropping. So, which is great.
So you figured out you need the 9 hours, and then especially the last last tail, the last 100 meters of sleep.
Yeah, which makes me like really irritable if I like my sleep gets disrupted. Like, yeah, I just love it. It feels great. So even talking about it, I'm like, man, can't wait for bed tonight.
And I guess your kids are 5 and 8. I think you mentioned before, so they're not
Yeah,
waking too
six,
much.
6 and 9 now. Yeah,
6
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're not really
They're,
waking at night, so you get a solid
they're
night's
a
sleep.
lot more self-sufficient, and yeah, I wake them up and get them ready in the morning. But yeah, my wife is able to corral them at night and put them to bed, so that makes my job a lot easier in the evening to just get ready and wind down. So
Yeah, I still have a 5 and a 3-year-old right now, so sleep is definitely one of my weak points that I'm
yeah,
trying to work on. But I think it just needs time until
at
they
least
get.
they're out of diapers. So yeah,
Yeah, I know that's huge. That's huge. And I want to touch on what I call SCOPE. This acronym I made. SCOPE stands for stress management. C for community. O for optimism. Might be an optimistic person. P, purpose in life, and E for youthful energy. So I'm curious, what aspects of that do you actually practice?
yeah. So I mean, so the first one, as far as stress, like yeah, I'm terrible about the stress piece. Work is just very demanding for both me and my wife, and with everything else going on. So my stress, I think I did cortisol tests like a couple years ago, and it was high.
Mm,
I just there's not a lot I can do about it other than like at work trying to. It's really just work intervention. I try to tell people no a lot, which makes them unhappy, but it makes me happier. So
mhm.
that helps. Yeah. So it's really just trying to like tell people no, diminish the amount of surprises I get at work, and just try to reduce the amount of in software development, you just like basically you have your list of tasks you want to do for the next 2 weeks, and you don't want anybody to interrupt you because you just want to knock out the tasks. And so trying to minimize the amount of interventions where people ask me for stuff is really important because it want to get more work done, but then to like, yeah, I don't have to stress about surprises. So that's my biggest thing is really just work stress and trying to find a way to minimize that. uh I, as far as other areas, I am a pretty optimistic person. I can be pessimistic at work, but overall, outside of work, I'm a very optimistic person. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, life is just so busy. I don't really have any really kind of interventions related to that as far as like what I do or mindfulness tactics that I follow. I'm just kind of like my day is just kind of going from one thing to the next, whether it's work, whether it's doing something with the kids. My son plays baseball, my daughter plays softball, my daughter swims. Like we always have some type of activity or event that we need to go to, and so I'm
Mhm.
kind of constantly in a state of flow. Like, okay, what's the next thing? Which is stressful, but yeah, I feel like a lot of times I'm not even thinking. I'm just kind of going through the motions. So,
Yeah, I think many people with young kids are in that state, right? It's hard to kind of stand back, take a step back, and reflect, and then savor moments. Yeah, oftentimes we're just reactive and
yeah.
going through emotions. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Do you find you have a purpose in life? Do what drives you, kind of, especially from the health and longevity perspective?
Yeah, I'd have to think about it. Like, I don't know. I feel like my purpose changes over time, When you have kids, your purpose is kind of your kids to some degree. You lose. sadly, you lose a little bit of your identity as part of that. I mean, it's just, I feel like it comes with the territory. Maybe other people feel different, but I just, I don't know. The way I look at it is like my kids are going to replace me and my wife. We got two kids, and we want to teach them the right things and to do the right things, and so that's kind of the purpose, is to like try to bring them up to speed on what they need to do. So
Yeah, to be good people. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a very important role, very important job.
Yeah.
Okay, in terms of community, do you network? Do you have a group of friends? Or is that
Yeah, I have a group of friends, but they're all kind of like me. They've got kids, both spouses work. We try to find time to meet for lunch and stuff. A lot of the friends are based on the sports circles, so like we're on the same team in baseball or softball or whatever. Like, yeah, we'll hang out with those people. So, but we don't really have as much uh, opportunity with friends as we used to. Both my and my wife's families both live close by, so we do celebrate birthdays and stuff, and hang out pretty much a couple times a month with them. But yeah, it's that's all fitting within the context of everything else going on. So yeah, we are pretty engaged. I think I'd say the biggest challenge is the fact that me and my wife both work from home. So yeah, it makes us kind of homebodies at times, and it is nice to get out. So yeah.
Do you find that ever since you started focusing on your health and you entered the Rejuvenation Olympics, that you've been gravitating towards interacting with individuals in the longevity field more, whether it's social media or whatever means?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of I definitely follow a lot of the content, watch a lot of the YouTube videos, and but it's more from a reading perspective than an engagement perspective, just
Okay.
because. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I find it all interesting, and I'm always looking for the next optimization to try to improve things. But yeah, I'm more read than write. So.
Do you have plans to maybe attend conferences in the future, longevity related conference of
Yeah, it's
interest?
not on the roadmap for right now. So yeah. If Brian Johnson came to Atlanta, I'd go to an event, but otherwise, yeah, it's a little
Yeah,
inconvenient. So yeah.
yeah. I'm just curious because I find a lot of people, being in this longevity space kind of makes you live a certain type of lifestyle, and many people in your inner circle can't relate to that lifestyle. So some
Yeah,
gravitate.
it's definitely totally the case, because yeah, I mean, you start talking about longevity stuff and people's eyes glaze over, and it's like, okay, well,
Yeah,
let's talk about sports or something else. So
right.
most people just don't get it. So, and that's fine. I wasn't into it until a few years back. I mean, as far as like this into it,
Yeah,
at this point, like when you start creating your food schedule and all that stuff, it's like, okay, I'm committed.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in terms of how do you perceive yourself? I think this one's really undervalued. The way you look at yourself. Do you consider yourself, a 44-year-old man, or do you feel that you're younger, or do you feel that you're aging quickly because of your back ailments and potential, cardiovascular disease risk?
Yeah, I'm conflicted about that. I like the doing the tests. Like some tests score good at, some tests I score bad at. So like my telomeres are short, so like that makes me actually older than my actual age. But then
Mhm.
other things like the phenotype age, I'm -12, so I'm like, cool, I'm like, I'm in my early 30s. But it depends on for me at least, it depends on which metric I look at. It depends on what age I feel, and so yeah, I'm kind of like, I feel kind of in between depending on which test I look at. So, but
Yeah,
I feel pretty good. I get around. I'm I look at myself versus like my friends in similar cohorts, and I'm like, hey, I'm pretty fit, so I feel pretty good about that. So.
yeah. I think that's essential. I think the way we view ourselves, and it's not always easy to do. These tests can obviously skew our opinion, but just perceiving yourself as being young and not even speaking, maybe that's to an extreme level, but joking around that you're old, I think that has subconscious effects. And so I think looking at yourself as young, I've been thinking more about that lately, and I think that's essential to do.
Yeah, it's like flipping back and forth between am I old or am I young? And it's like, well, depends on which body part, I guess. So,
Exactly, yeah. And which day, right?
yeah.
Okay, great. So, any other interventions that you do that you've tried that you found were useful, like say hot cold therapies, HBOT you mentioned, at least for Brian Johnson, red light therapy?
Yeah, I like the red light therapy. Yeah, it actually improved my eyesight. So I've been doing I have a red panel I use every morning, and I don't put the eye covers on. I keep my eyes shut. But yeah, the past two eye exams, I've had contacts or I've had glasses since I was like 8 or 9 years old, and it's never gotten better. But with the red light stuff, actually, my optometrist was really surprised because the past two times my corrective lenses have been less strong, I guess weaker, because like my eyes have actually gotten better, surprisingly. So that hasn't happened my entire life. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing until if they start telling me my eyes are going the wrong way, then I'm like, okay, maybe I won't do as much red light. But for me, at least, that intervention has had a tangible effect that I've noticed and that the optometrist mentioned to me. The other thing I did, and I didn't think this was going to be a big deal, for my phenotype age, my creatinine has always been high. It's like, okay, I work out a lot, which is going to drive that a little bit. But I, I took creatine for a certain period of time. I was, oh, when I drop creatine, it'll drop. Well, it didn't drop after I stopped taking creatine. But I switched from the whey protein to a plant protein. So I get the kind from Costco that's like 7 or 8 different types of plants or whatever. And so it's like, 21 grams of protein, like 10 grams of fiber. I've been doing that for the past 2 or 3 months and actually got my uh, creatinine's a little bit lower, but it gave me my lowest RDW that I've had. I think I'm at 11.9, and RDW is one of the correlating factors to the phenotype aging or whatever. But yeah, it's actually given me like some of my best numbers that I've had. I have 12 years of blood test data, so yeah, it's like the at least for me the switching from whey protein to protein actually helped quite a bit in my phenotype aging. So
Okay.
that was kind of a surprise.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I find the pheno age especially is geared towards metrics that lower cholesterol, and I think eating less saturated, less animal products will help for that, right? So it kind of makes sense. So let's touch a little bit more on that. So for testing, you said you do whole blood analysis, right? Every 3 months, right?
Yeah,
Kind of
every
give
three
a
months.
general overview of what you test for.
I do the big three, so CBC, lipids, and metabolic.
Yeah,
I added uh, free and total testosterone, and then I also added HbA1c just so I'd get all the metrics for the phenotype age.
yeah.
So yeah, I do all those tests. Yeah, every 2 to 3 months. Um,
So is that through a laboratory or do you home kit?
I was doing Jason Health because they did the big three, but then like I wanted to add the other stuff, so I started using Alta Labs. But yeah, like I do all the stuff through the cheaper online labs, and then I have a Quest location near my house, so I just put in the schedule, and it's kind of hilarious. Like if I do all the labs through Quest, it's like probably $300-400, but if I do them through Alta Labs, it's like I think it's 200. The testosterone's kind of expensive, but yeah, like it's a lot cheaper doing labs through that. And obviously, like I can't go to my doctor and be like, "Hey, I want to do my blood test every 3 months." They'll just tell me to
Right,
get out of there and charge me a $150 copay. So yeah, it's just cheaper
right.
to just do it myself and
Yeah.
read my metrics. So
Michael, he's got a weight that he says under $100. I think he gets his pheno age blood work done. Don't quote me on that, but I
okay.
said it was pretty
J-
cheap.
Jason Health for the big three was $40, and that was like a steal. It was like $30 for the test, and then like $10 for the phlebotomist fee. And so it's like, yeah, but mine went up because I added HbA1c, the testosterone, and then the uh, the inflammation marker one. So that's what took it from like $50 to 200.
The
But
HSCRP, is that the
yeah,
one?
HSCRP. Yep. Yeah. So
So raise it close to $200. Yeah, it's still
yeah, when
cheaper
you add
than
all
what
that
you
stuff
find here
in,
in Canada.
yeah, yeah. And the testosterone, one observation I thought was interesting. I noticed this a month or two ago. Was I added, oh, I didn't mention this in my exercise, but I started doing, I got back issues, so I don't like squatting, but I got a belt squat machine. and I started doing belt squats along with bench press. I do it like maybe once or twice a week, just like a 5x5 routine. But that actually increased my testosterone by 20%, just adding belt squats and like the 5 reps or whatever, which, that's what they say. Like, if you do 5 reps of heavy weight, like for squats, your testosterone's gonna go up. I went up 20%. I was pretty happy. I was like, yep, that's what they say. So,
That's
so I
nice.
thought that was like kind of an interesting observation. So
Yeah.
I don't do
Make
like
sense, obviously,
heavy
yeah.
lifting like I used to when I was younger, but yeah.
Yeah, engaging those quads, lower legs, the legs, quad muscles are massive. So yeah, it makes sense. That's
Yeah,
a big
yeah,
jump though, regardless. 20%. Wow.
yeah. It's like I was pretty happy. That was free testosterone too. Like, yeah.
Did
So
you feel differently though? Did you feel the effect?
maybe a little bit, but not a ton. So
Hmm, interesting. And then for testing, what other longevity or aging tests have you done? You said you've done telomere length tests, right?
yeah, I did the telomere length. I did inside tracker like a couple of years ago. Like, yeah, I've done like a couple of the different ones.
But the Insight Tracker is blood-based, blood work, right?
Based. It's like the big 3 plus they add a bunch of stuff that's specific to like so like that's where I did like the cortisol testing.
Okay.
They add some other measurements and then like they tell you what range you're supposed to be and that type of thing. But it's yeah, I mean if you get the list of tests from Inside Tracker, you can go to Alta Health and do the same thing and you know they'll tell you interventions and stuff, but for me personally, I didn't find the interventions very like helpful. So I mean like they tell me like, oh, you need a psyllium husk supplement, and every time I've taken psyllium husk, I've had like an infection on my my CBC score. Like for some reason, my body doesn't like it. So
Mm.
I'm like, okay, well this isn't very informative if it, yeah, it's not working for me. So yeah, yeah.
Have you
Um,
done Eolo metabolome health? Looking at your
that doesn't
markers.
ring a bell. Which one's that one related to?
It's a relatively
Oh,
new one.
Eola. Yeah, I did that one. I thought that was great. They raised their prices though. When I got it done, it was like $200. I wanted to do it again, but it's like I think it's like 450 now. I'm like, I don't
Really?
really care that much
Yeah,
about
we took the
metabolic
price
health.
seriously.
But I loved all the measurements and like dumping them out in Excel and stuff. I'd really like to. I mean, one thing I'd like to do is get that. Just, you get so much information between that, the gene therapy, or the genome sequencing. I'd like to get all that data, feed it to an LLM, and say like, what optimizations do I need to do, and it just tell me. And I send it my website. Hey, this is my diet and exercise. What I'm doing. Like, I just want to feed it all the information. It would tell me like exactly what I need to do. We're getting there. It's going to come soon. So
Yeah, I agree. I think we're getting there, and that's the goal, right? That's
it's exciting. So
it's very
yeah,
exciting. Yeah, I think that's what we need, and obviously, eventually, you're going to have the toilets at home that will do these measurements for us and feed it back to us through our, I don't know, mirror in the bathroom and tell us what we need to do for that day. But
yeah,
I don't think we're far away from at least having a system that you can feed that information to, and then having it spit out more specific and detailed, optimizations for you to do.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that basically covers your testing. Ever look into whole body MRI, or is that something on your list for testing?
Yeah, it's on my list. That one's like 2100. Yeah, it's just lower. I got the MRI a couple years ago for my back, so I feel like okay, like maybe when I get closer to 50, I'll reevaluate that. But I feel pretty good about it. But yeah, I just wish it was cheaper. So if it was like $500, I'd be like, yeah, let's get the
Yeah,
MRI. But
yeah. Well, that's one of the big hurdles, right? The cost of all these things that really adds up quickly.
yeah,
Yeah. And you said that for at home personalized, you were using Whoop before to measure at least your VO2 max, your other metrics such as resting heart rate.
yeah. The
Anything
video.
else that you do at home to measure?
What's that?
Anything else you do at home to measure?
No, not really. I mean, I used the Apple Watch for the VO2 Max, but then yeah, I got the Whoop. I got one of the smart scales. It's okay. I mean, my weight doesn't change much, so yeah, it's not a big deal. Trying to think of anything else. No, not really.
Okay. Okay. So a couple more questions. The second one is more of a rapid fire, but I want to ask you: could you give an estimate of the cost of your protocol if you know it offhand? Like, how much does it cost
Oh,
for you to do your longevity protocol?
Whenever I think of the cost of my protocol, I always think of the salmon because it's like between the salmon, the avocado, like all the vegetables and stuff. I'm like,
And the
that's like
testing, I guess, right? The testing, $200, I
oh,
believe.
okay, yeah. I mean,
That's okay if you don't have the number.
yeah, I don't have a number off the top of my head. I know my lunch is like $15 a day, which is like it's like eating out. But
Hmm.
yeah, other than that, it's not super expensive. The blood work, I mean, if I didn't do the testosterone and all that, and honestly, like for people that are like on a more of a budget, like just do the big three through Jason Health. It's only $40 if you're in the States, of course, obviously.
Right.
They do them through the Quest labs. Like it's easy to find the lab, and you can just you just those are the three big ones: the CBC, the lipids, and the metabolic. The other stuff's just like kind of nice to know, but
Yeah.
that would be my recommendation. It's just yeah, lean it out, start there. If you run out of optimizations there, then yeah, start expanding the list. But yeah, this stuff can get expensive fast. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, especially True Diagnostics. I love their service, but it is expensive too. That adds up. All these tests add up.
yeah, you're run out of codes. It's like okay, let me find another code, get 10% off.
Yeah, exactly.
Use a different email address.
Right. They do have sales once in a while. I think especially Black Friday, they have pretty decent sales, right?
Yeah, you got to stock up. So
Stock
yeah.
up, yeah. Okay, so let's go through a few rapid fire questions, I guess, to finish it off. So, what intervention do you think has led the biggest improvement to your I guess pace of aging or biological age?
Yeah, I'm not sure because the first time I took a test was after I already had my diet kind of locked in.
Okay.
So I didn't really like do one and then like see a bunch of changes. It's just like little optimizations over time.
Yeah. I mean, diet was probably the biggest one, right? The biggest effect.
Probably so. Yeah, I've always been a good sleeper. I've always exercised, but the diet, like, yeah, again, I didn't really eat a vegetable until I was like 41, 42. So yeah, it's changing all that around made a big difference for me, at least, and I feel better too. So.
Yeah. Great. What test do you think is the most informative? That out of all the tests that you do for longevity and health, which ones are the most useful and informative?
I mean, yeah, the price per information it's got to be the big three. I like the true diagnostic stuff, but I like it because if I didn't score well on it, I probably wouldn't be as interested in it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'd probably try to find a test that I was good at.
yeah, yeah,
It's like my kid playing sports, It's like,
yeah,
oh, he
yeah,
doesn't like that sport. Let me find a sport he can go like enjoy. So I'm gonna follow the stuff I'm good at,
yeah.
unfortunately. But it is good to try to optimize stuff we're bad at. I do really like the Iola, the metabolic stuff. That's just like a ton of information.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
I would say just the big three is the best price per dollar or price per gain. So
Okay. Yeah. And then what about for exercise? You obviously dabble in, zone two, zone five, resistance training. What do you think is the most impactful, at least for you, for your
I mean,
health?
as far as what I saw was the boxing, that really maybe it's because I wasn't doing a lot of zone five before that, but I mean, seeing my sleep score jump like it did when I started boxing, it was like it was obvious that it was making a good impact on my stuff. So I just have to see if I can replicate that with my zone five approach. Otherwise, I'm going to be going back to boxing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And then supplements, you don't take many supplements, but which supplement out of the three or so you take, or even, I guess going back to NMA?
It's either the vitamin D3 or the rosuvastatin that's made the biggest difference. Obviously, the D3, my score went from a 30 to a 90 in vitamin D, and then my statin took my LDL from 140 to, well, now it's like 63. So yeah, I mean those for me, but I mean everybody's different. So some people are going to respond different to different medications. So, but for me, those two are the big two.
Okay. And what's your next intervention? What are you looking forward to trying next to tweak your routine?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to try the NR again. I I mean, as far as the stuff Brian Johnson does, I'm really curious about the total plasma exchange because I've seen online that's like $1,000, which is like it's just a ton of money. But it like the theory makes sense to me because it's like, yeah, like we go to the car shop to change our oil in our car like every 6 months. It's like, okay, maybe every 40 years I should just like clean out the system and put some, I think they replace it with albumin in plasma or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that intervention makes sense to me if they have the data to support it. But I think Brian Johnson in one of his posts was like, yeah, I'm going to practice doing it like once a month for the next 3 to 6 months or whatever and see what the intervention makes most sense. And I'm like, hey, like this is like, that's great. You have a lot of money, but like I'm looking like a once every 40-year type thing. So yeah, that those are the ones I'm most curious about. So
Yeah, I'm very interested in that too. I'm actually, I don't know if you heard of Dr. Diane Ginsburg.
mhm.
She's more, yeah. So I'm going to interview her in a couple of weeks. We're scheduled to. So she's more from the young plasma. So it's not quite the same, right? It's not just diluting out your old blood, but it's actually introducing blood from a. So there could be a secondary aspect to that, where you're actually getting pro youthful factors from these young individuals. But it's very fascinating. I'm really keeping a close eye on that field.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like I know Brian did the thing with his dad, and his dad's like metrics all came down from getting, his son's blood,
Yeah.
which is it's really fascinating. But like now he's just practicing with albumin, so I'm like, well, albumin can get you like 80% of the gains without like having to use like real blood. Then yeah, that's it's kind of ideal, but more scalable anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, and then us in the longevity field, like to find a donor that you'd want blood from, I think it's hard to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Our
Like
lifestyle,
I don't want any side effects. I don't want to like, get some disease, incurable disease by accident or something.
yeah,
Or get like some type of infection or resistance to the blood. Yeah, it's seems like you're rolling the dice a little bit, but yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating. And also fascinating, for individuals, such as yourself, you have a young biological pace of aging. So how much of an effect would it have, right? Is the next question, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It'd be
Would it even
fun to
have
find
effect?
out. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Versus like Brian Johnson's dad, I know he started doing some interventions before that, but given his age, and then he's probably not in that peak shape, so obviously it played a bigger role in terms of his health.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
probably not a silver bullet for people who are optimizing. So
right.
yeah.
And then last couple of questions. So who do you follow? Who are your say top three longevity experts that you like to follow and learn from?
Yeah, be Brian Johnson, Seam Lund, and Michael Lustgartner. They're my
Okay.
three kind of that I kind of hone in on and watch. So
Yeah, well, those are great resources for sure.
yeah,
And then, so what's your big goal? What's your next goal in longevity? Is it to lower your epigenetic age, or what are you working on?
yeah. I'd like to figure out a way to get my telomeres to lengthen, like
Okay.
naturally if possible. I know there's supplements for telomeres, but I'd rather not have to take supplements if I can avoid it, obviously. And then, yeah, VO2 max is just like a fun thing to pursue. I kind of enjoy the exercise. I mean, especially sitting behind a desk all day. I like the idea of like, okay, let's set a goal and see if I can reach it. And that's something that's like that I think is totally doable. So I'm just trying to improve my VO2 max. So
Okay, great. And then, if you want to find out more about you and your protocol, I'm guessing your website. Anything you want to plug right now?
yeah, yeah, no, heck yeah, health.com. Yeah, my contact information is at the bottom. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to help. And yeah, just excited to engage in the community as questions come up or as people find interventions. So yeah.
And reach out to you. Are you on social media, or do you have an email address there, or how do you?
Yeah, at the very bottom, there's a contact me link. It's
Okay,
richardjheck@gmail.com. So
perfect. I'm sure the community will appreciate that. And I
yeah,
appreciate your time today. Thanks for doing this. And I think a lot of people can learn from your protocol. And best of luck in terms of, I guess, elongating your telomere length and then lowering your epigenetic pace of aging even more.
cool. Thanks, Lucas. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks, Richard. Take care.
Yeah.